with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred MatrIx. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. My producer is Deborah DeFranco. She's my personal one. I love Deborah. And you're listening to us on Revolution Radio Studio B. And we have two guests with us today, and we're going to break their stories down into the first hour and second hour. And the first hour is Nancy Tremaine, and the second hour, Elizabeth Anglin. And let me tell you a little bit about Nancy before we pull her on. She's an experiencer, messenger, and author of 2 published books. She's the middle of 5 children. She grew up in Novi, Michigan, which at the time was a small, unpopulated country village of dirt roads and trees. And in July of 1961, a UFO hovered above a tree between her home and her girlfriend's Cindy's house, and they were 12 years old at the time. The ship hovered silently for over 20 minutes against a clear blue sky. It was witnessed by Cindy's father, brother, sister, and several neighbors, as well as 3 Novi, Michigan police who were on the scene. All the while, the police chief, Lee BeGole, was at the station taking calls from frantic citizens. The sighting became the secret Cindy, and she would never speak of, and it wasn't spoken of for over 50 years. It was a clue that tied them together, that held them together. So, Dr. Lessin, before we bring on our first guest, Nancy, what would you like to say?
Nancy's story is a very courageous one because she tells the truth and everybody's trying to shush her up. But she did the research. She gathered all the evidence in a very systematic way, and she quite proves direct experience. It's not theory, it's what she experienced.
And so all this is featured on aquariumradio.com, our website, aquariumradio.com. And her first book was Symbiosis. We're going to cover some of that for some background, and then we're going to go into her new book, Preordained. So welcome to Sacred MatrIx. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you both so much, Sasha and Janet. Just thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
We love having you back. It's been a couple years, so we're delighted that you returned. So go ahead and tell us your story.
And I want to know about your kid, too.
The kitten.
Well, I don't know where to start. We can't get to the second book unless we do a little on the first book. That 50 years of silence, it was almost like we were programmed to be silent. And it was only after Cindy's death that I received a message from her telling me, reminding me again about the military investigation, which I didn't want to even face, or I didn't even understand what it was. So I confronted the former police chief, and he spilled the beans. We did an interview with the Detroit Historical Society, and he talked about the military coming in and how they came in prepared to disbelieve because things like that don't happen. You know, we spent 5 years. He shared information with me. He was like a father to me. He never had children, and he put his reputation on the line to validate me. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on what had happened in 1961. It was the summer of 1961. I was playing with my girlfriend Cindy in the house, and note that I was never allowed out past 7:30 or dusk. There were severe consequences to be paid if I was. And Cindy's father hollered for us to come outside. And when we walked, we were 12 years old. When we walked out that front door, our lives were changed forever. There was a beautiful silver ship hovering above a tree between our two homes, and it had a wide belt of red, green, and white flashing or rotating lights. They were going so fast we couldn't tell. There was no fear at that point. It was just awe, just awe. And in my mind, I kept talking to it. I kept saying, stay here. Everybody's got to see you. Everybody does. And Novi, Michigan back then was a very small village with just homes were starting to be built. And we could watch neighbors starting to come out of their front doors. And Cindy's father was adjusting a small tripod telescope. And I wondered why, because the ship was literally right in front of us. I mean, the ship was right in front of us. And then we watched as a Novi, Michigan police car coasted to a stop in front of where we were all standing. And two police officers exited the car, never turning their backs to the ship. And I grabbed the one officer, and it was so difficult just to voice three simple words. I since learned that when you're in shock like that, things are in slow motion, and I struggled to say, is this real? Because I had to know that what I was seeing, I was seeing. He never said a word. And then a car started coming down Novi Road, and I would find out 50 years later who was driving that car. That car was an unmarked police car. It was being driven by Officer Martin Cohn, which now puts 3 Novi, Michigan police officers on the scene. And back then they only had 2-way radios. And he had called Chief Lee BeGole at the police department, which was just a couple miles away, and he said, strange object overhead, send cars. Well, a beam of light came out of the ship, and it aimed at this the officer's car, and it was aimed at the hood of the car, and when it hit that hood, the car was immobilized. And at that point, I think it was mild hysteria. I still don't really understand why I started jumping up and down and yelling, over here, over here. And Cindy was grabbing me and telling me to stop. And the ship actually tilted on its side, and it spoke to me, and it said, telepathically, we, and I didn't know about telepathy back then, we see you. And then I grabbed the police officer again, and I said, do something. I was terrified by this point. And he looked down at me, and it was just a quick glance, but I saw fear. And it was the first time I'd ever seen fear. And that's where that ends for me for 50 years. I'm at home with my father, who is kneeling on the kitchen floor, telling me that I'm home and I'm safe. But I can see the kitchen door is open, and I can see that it's almost dark outside. And I look at the clock on the stove, and it says 10 minutes to 9. And I wasn't getting a spanking, and my dad was hugging me and telling me he was glad to have me home. And I was silenced. My father silenced me that night, and I would find out why. He said I was never to speak of this event again, and he shared a secret with me. I would find out 50 years why this was a secret, because there was a military investigation that had been done. They sent my father to California and offered him a job position in Australia, which he refused. I was taken to stay with strangers until things quieted down. Wow.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is there's a lot of suffering involved, and as you discussed this,
yes.
You're starting to feel some.
Cindy and I never spoke about it for 50 years. It just never. There were a couple times that I would try to bring up the subject. I would just say, Cindy, can we talk about? And she knew, and she would just start shaking, and and I don't think either one of us were ready. But it was the weirdest thing because for 50 years, between the two of us, we were married 7 times. We were in abusive relationships. She was a hardcore alcoholic. I was, I don't know what word you want to use, drugs, men, sex, and we both led very unhealthy lives. But then 50 years went by. It was September 1st of 2011, and I was playing on the computer, and I saw a word I'd never seen, ufology. Ufology. And I thought, you mean there are people that actually study this? I couldn't believe it. And it turned out to be Dr. Harry Wellness, who had been a former Michigan State director many years prior. And I sent him an email telling him I might have something he'd be interested in hearing. Well, he got right back to me, and we met a few days later, and he asked me if I could draw a picture of what I had been drawing every year or so and discarding. I did that for my sanity. The picture I'd drawn of the ship and the tree and me and Cindy and the police and the car that was immobilized, and I did it all, and within 2-3 minutes I had it all drawn out, and he was quite impressed. And he showed me a bunch of pictures of aliens, and he wanted to know if anything looked familiar, and nothing did, nothing gelled. But then he brought up another term that I'd never heard, which is missing time. He asked me if I wondered why it was getting dark when I got home, and I said, yes. You know, that never did make sense. And why I stood on the headboard of my bed that night, and every night after that for a long time, chanting, please come back and get me. Now, who was I asking to come back and get me? Because I didn't remember at that time being on board the ship. But I would chant that. I would stare out that bedroom window at that exact spot where that ship had hovered, chanting those words, wanting them to come back and get me. So they had left me with a very positive feeling. And jumping back now to the 50 years later, Dr. Wellness found a regression therapist for me. And within 2 weeks, I was having my first regression. And I remembered being frozen and not being able to move. And then I remembered being placed on my back, and I was in some kind of an electrical energy wave. And I knew I was going up into the ship. And I wasn't afraid. It felt beautiful in this energy wave. And I've since found out that I asked the questions, and they always answer me, and they told me the words standing wave. So I assumed they were telling me that I was in a standing wave. Well, I talked to a physicist, and he said, no, you weren't in a standing wave. They had altered your molecular structure, and you were a standing wave. Still over my head. So they encouraged me after the first or second regression to go after Cindy and anybody else I could. And I did. I became Nancy Drew. I went through the Novi, Michigan archives day by day. I contacted fellow classmates from elementary, junior, and high school. Cindy and I spent years in sharing our information, and I recorded all of our phone calls, and you can hear in the phone calls memories coming to us, and we were finishing each other's sentences, and we both remembered what had happened on board ship. She was on board ship with me. The laparoscopy that was performed with the needle in the stomach, and the small grays who were doing the procedures, and I was screaming and hollering, I want Cindy. I want Cindy. Get Cindy too. I don't want to be alone. So they brought Cindy on board, and they placed her in a cylindrical tube above me to appease me and to shut me up. And the one gray got right up in my face with his eyes, and he stared at me, and he said, we are going to do what we are going to do, and you are going to get back home safely. And I knew at that point that I relented, completely relented at that point. And I remember looking at Cindy up in the tube, at her blue eyes, And I felt such comfort in that. And then Cindy was gone. And they placed a rod, a metal tube in my left hand to hold. And I was to wrap my fingers around it, to curl my fingers around this rod. And I drew an illustration, and my illustrations are all drawn by the 12-year-old Nancy that still resides within this vessel. And as you look at the illustration, you can see that the three grays are looking at the wall as they're monitoring what they are putting in, the information that they are putting in me through this rod. I call it a rod. It was a metal cylindrical object about 6 inches long. And I was given the message, take this baton and run with it, be an ambassador. So that's what I've been doing since 2011. Cindy had one regression done just 10 months before she died. She literally drank herself to death. And in her regression, she was asked why she was there. And these are her words. She said, I believe I was there because Nancy needed me, and I believe I was there because God wanted me to be with her. And I was recording her regression, and I had to leave the room because I realized how much she loved me. I remembered the nice one on board. I'm jumping back and forth, and I'm hoping everybody can keep up with me because I'm going from 2011 to, 1961, back and forth. I remember.
Nancy, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
What made Cindy wait so long before she did a regression? Like, what led her to make the decision to actually do it so close to her death?
That's a great question. It was her husband, bless his heart. He knew she needed it. I asked her several times to have one. Although her memories were so clear, we both had very clear memories. But there was more information that came out of her.
Were they the same? Did you guys have the same memories?
Yes, and that's what's so wonderful about having her regression and mine. I have recordings of everything, and it was because of Cindy, who kept saying there was a military investigation to me. She said it. The last time she said it was after her death. And she wanted me to go after the former police chief and find out about that military investigation. And that's when I ended the first book, because I knew that I was going to have to go down a new rabbit hole, and a military investigation was just so far over my head and frightening to me. And remembering that they went door to door, and Police Chief Lee BeGole said they wanted to talk to everyone, and they did. And Cindy told me that my father had threatened to kill them. They wanted to talk to me. They came to the door and wanted to talk to a 12-year-old kid. And my dad was so protective, and I was his favorite. There was no way those men he would have killed them before they would get past that door, and that's why they flew him to California and offered him a job position. But no, I didn't talk to them, and Chief BeGole said he thought my father made a mistake not letting them speak to me. Well, I had to remind him I was 12 years old, and I didn't remember being on board at that point. I only remembered the ship and the immobilized car and the police. I remembered all that, but my mind couldn't handle, or they had programmed me to forget what had happened on board for 50 years, because Cindy and I awakened the same month, September of 2011, and former Police Chief Lee BeGole awakened in October of 2011, the following month. And I gave him a letter And he called me 2 weeks after the letter, and he said, "My God, that was a long time ago." He said, "You're not crazy. It really happened." And the car that was immobilized was Officer Martin Cohn in an unmarked car. And he said they came in from New Mexico or Arizona. And they came in from the Air Force. And they came to the police station. And they came in prepared to scare the hell out of everyone that had seen it. And they wanted any pictures that were taken. And that is why they went door to door. And, you know there were pictures taken. The ship hovered against a clear blue sky for over 20 minutes. And Mr. Lewitt, Cindy's father, was adjusting the tripod telescope. And those were the days of those Instamatic, where you watch the picture after 3 minutes or whatever it develops.
The Polaroids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can bet your butt that they got every picture that was taken. And if they didn't, they probably killed whoever they didn't. Yeah, you could still hear the anger I have for the military.
What makes you think they killed people?
What do I think?
Somebody died? Did somebody die as a result of this? That you
Absolutely. Think? I think that's what they said. And I think that's what they said to everybody. Yeah, that's how they operate. That's what they do. That's our government. But I'm out now, and I'm 70 years old, and not afraid of the devil, and nothing will shut me up. So,
now, what are the differences between your two books?
Oh boy, they're nothing. The first book ended when Cindy was found dead on her kitchen floor, and Preordained is what happens when you become an experiencer for a length of time.
So it's not an extension of the story. Is it just the next chapter?
It's kind of like that. Yep.
Okay.
I started to experience, after Cindy's death, I started to experience out-of-body, Samadhi, sleep writing, rematerialization. And I think Dr. Ray Hernandez said it well when he said that hardcore experiencers, we have pierced the veil of the information fields of our reality, and our consciousness has tapped into source and information. And we must learn to live in this conscious, paranormal reality of increased contact. And I'll tell you about my first Samadhi experience, which I didn't even put in the book. There's a lot of things I haven't put in the second book. I have started a third book, and it's my final book. I was walking in the park behind my apartment. I have a park right behind my apartment, and I spend a lot of my time every day in the summer. I'm in the park, and I wrote a lot of my books in the park. And I was walking, and I felt a separation from my physical body, and I actually rose above. And I had rose above, and I was at tree level, and I was watching myself walk from behind, the physical me walking. And I thought to myself how tiny I was. And people have always said I'm small, and I never realized that. And as I was watching myself walk, I thought, wow, you really are tiny. And it was only when I became aware or conscious that I wasn't in that body that was walking that I was quickly returned. It was an out-of-body experience, and it was my soul had separated from, I can't even explain it. I'm still coming to terms with this. My encounters are a representation of a much greater reality, and I believe that this rise in consciousness and vibrational frequency is necessary for our soul's development. And I have become a welcoming antenna for increased contact. And once someone enters Samadhi at least once, an internal transformation takes place. And this is what has happened to me. It's a cosmic oneness. And it's a state of I know, not an I believe. It's an I know now. It's a oneness of mind, soul, and body. Now I get to start talking about Preordained. I sent that manuscript to you, and I had pointed out page 54 because I had predicted in October of 2016, 4 years ago almost, what would be happening in America right now, right this minute. I foresaw it, and I wrote about it. And this is what I had written on page 54 of Preordained. I foresaw America as it is today. I felt impending doom and Mother Earth's soil absorbing all of this negative energy. I described it as a simmering stew about to boil over. I said I felt civil unrest beneath my feet. I could smell anger, frustration, and fear. I said I could foresee a civil war. I was shown an image of Putin gazing down with smug superiority and pleasure, as Americans are in a state of heightened panic and vulnerable. I said, the rest of the world is watching. The curtain has been pulled back and we have been exposed. We are like mice, and the cat is ready to pounce. There is such a divide between the masses. God help us. That was written 4 years ago. You couldn't get any closer to what's going on in this country.
How did that come to you? How did that come to you?
It just came. It's such a knowing. It's a download of information. It's a vision and words, and I write them as I receive them. How
did you enter the Samadhi state?
Without intention. Yes.
Wow.
Without intention, and this is what's so weird, because people spend years, yogis spend years trying to reach this state of Samadhi, and I did it without intention.
What was going on right before it happened?
Nothing can be going on. I can be doing the dishes. I can't remember. I just knew that vision had been given to me, and I wrote to David Chase, and I told him about the vision, and I sent it to him. I said I saw this vision. I actually wanted him to draw the vision of Putin because it's still in my head so clear exactly what I saw. It was a profile of Putin looking down with that smug superiority. And he's in heaven right now. I mean, he's loving what's happening to us.
Did you have any subsequent visions, like when this is get to the other side? You know where we're going on this?
Oh, you mean what side of his face?
What's next?
What's next after we go through COVID, or are we getting through COVID?
I just did. I'm going to be honest. I just did get some information, and it's not good. And I've only shared it with one person, and it's a physicist in Mexico. But it's not good news, and I'm just not ready to even go there right now. But I would like to talk about some of the information that has been given to me, and how my whole life has turned around. I don't even feel like the same person anymore.
You're not.
I'm not.
Shy. You're fully here.
Yeah. Yes. I will start with because there's three things I want to talk about. The angelic beings in 2015. This happened just right after Cindy's death. She was found dead in August, and in October, I was told that they wanted to tap in to me. And I laid myself down on the couch, and I connected with Mr., the pilot of the ship in 1961. And he was in a featureless, transparent energy form. And we glided down a ramp, which I understood to be the lower level of the ship. And we were immediately greeted by an angelic being with the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life. When I say angelic, I mean with the wings, you know, and the white robe. And he was actually expecting us, is the feeling that I got. And the entire room was computer chipboard. And the only time I'd ever seen anything like it was at a friend's house, and he had taken off the back of his television set. And I said, that's it. That is what the bottom level of the ship is. It's all that. But it's divided into sections. And at each section was a different angelic being. And they were all working, and I couldn't see their faces. I could see their backs or their sides. The only one that I saw face on was the angelic being that had greeted us. And I didn't want to be rude, but I asked Mr., and I covered my mouth like they couldn't hear me telepathically. And I said, what are they, angels? They all have wings. And I could feel, Mr. and I have a connection where I can feel what he is thinking, as well as he was found humor in how naive I was to ask such a question. He said, ask them. So I turned to the smiling angelic being, and he said to me, we are benevolent beings here to help save the planet. If this makes us angels, then we are. And there was an electrical buzzing in that room. It was an energy-filled room. And I understood that each angelic being was a different species of being, and they were all working together for the good of humanity. And the feeling was love. I didn't want to leave that feeling. It's a love that I've never experienced on Earth with anyone. And what they did is they downloaded me with an enormous amount of information within a second's time. And I had my pad of paper and my pen right next to the sofa, because they wanted me to put everything down as soon as I returned from this tap-in. And I was told, quote, that they travel as different sizes, shapes, colors of orbs, rods, and ships, and all of them, and ETs. And no matter what they are all light, knowledge, energy beings. And then, as if my head is a slide projector, they drop pictures in front of me, and I can't see beyond the pictures. My vision is completely blocked except what they put in my head. And I was shown strands of what appeared to be twisted fibers. And then I watched as a tweezer came down and removed one of the fibers, and I was to understand that they were telling me that it was the alteration of DNA, and they were removing emotions of no value, such as rage, hatred. And then I was made to experience, and this was horrible, I was made to experience within a few seconds all of the pain that I had caused my daughter. And I felt and understood, and I fully accepted the role I had played in her life, and I took responsibility for it. And I understood, and I was made to understand that we are responsible for what we put out in the universe, and it has a domino effect. And then I was shown an image of 3 circles. The smallest circle is a heart in the middle, and I was to understand that was the heart of the universe. And around that circle was a slightly larger circle with just the words love. And the tail from the heart, if you've ever seen a heart with a tail, it had entered that second circle. And the largest circle had 3 words, past, present, and future. And I was told humans are always chasing the tail of love. And all of this was dropped in within a matter of seconds. And I was told we are both ahead of and behind ourselves at the same time. This is best described as we are chasing our past, the tail of love, to arrive at our future, only to learn that we have bitten ourselves in the ass and are right back where we started. Eternity is a circle, always chasing the tail of love. You can't tell where one ends and one begins. So that was my experience in 2015, right after Cindy's death. And then it really gets deep. I was asked to speak at a Buddhist monastery, and I know nothing about Buddhism, knew nothing. And I went to the monastery. It's about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from where I live, and it was beautiful. I felt so at home. And when I got home, I became obsessed with this. I don't know if you've ever seen the Buddhist symbol, the sunyata, which is means nothingness or emptiness. Well, I became obsessed with that sunyata, and to me, I saw that little gap or opening in the sunyata as a way to escape into other dimensions or realities. And this is where it gets weird. On November 29th of 2017, and I have never walked in my sleep, I awoke to find that my pad of paper and pen were laying on my table, and that I had gotten up in the middle of the night or sometime, and I had written, not in the lines, but crossways, and I'd drawn an image, and I'd written, and I had words in them. And this is what I wrote. Quote, realities or illusions are a part of the delusion we have created. We are living in a delusional illusion of our making. We are all players in this fictional theater we perform. The stage is set at birth and our performance has begun. End quote. Now next to this, these words that are, I held on to them for 12 days because I couldn't understand them, was a circle. And inside the circle I had written the words consciousness, sound, light, energy, love, all of that. And I was made to understand that that circle depicted the womb that gave birth to humanity. And outside of the circle I had 3 words in quotations. And the words were the what is. And I didn't know what the what is until, I don't know when, maybe just a couple years ago or a year ago. But I now understand that the what is God or the cosmic mind. So like I said, I had held on to those to that for 12 days because it was so over my head, and I ended up sharing it with Kevin Estrella. I was actually directed to send it to Kevin Estrella and to Grant Cameron, and ironically, Kevin Estrella gave my email to a quantum physicist. I had no idea what a quantum physicist is. I still don't. And he got in contact with me, and he was asking me questions, like I had the answers. And I sent him what I had written in a sleep state, and he got right back to me. And he said, Nancy, what you wrote in a sleep state is compatible with somebody by the name of Paul Brunton, he wrote, or Raphael Hurst. I'd never heard of him. But Raphael Hurst was a best-selling author, a spiritualist, a yogi, who believed in communication with the divine. And he told me and shared with me what Paul Brunton had wrote and had written. And it scared the hell out of me because this is what Paul Brunton had written. Quote, the world pattern is preordained. That's how I got the title for my book. It is written out like a stage play. Brunton saw himself as a puppet being manipulated, He states that every instant is preordained by the past as well as by the plan. Even our freedom of will is preordained. Not only do we affect those whose lives come in contact with ours, but those whose lives that seem too remote or unlinked to ours. There are and man with man. And that was his end of his quote. And that just, it validated what I had written. And so my whole belief system has changed at that moment. And I realized that everything is preordained. We are actually getting a drink here. Just a second.
Okay. Take your time.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of me. That's why I said an hour interview, because physically and emotionally, this drains me. I'm going to share the last, this is one of the chapters in the book, and give you a taste of what it is. Exactly 1 week after I got back from the Buddhist monastery, exactly 1 week to the day, it was a Sunday, August 19th, 2018, and this is what I experienced. And it's best explained if you've ever fainted and come to. This is what I felt. I felt disoriented, and I watched as my forearms were being materialized to wrists. I saw this fuzzy energy like jigsaw puzzles and particles and molecules almost dancing. My wrists became hands, my hands became fingers, and I saw that I was holding the steering wheel of my car, and I felt my soul slip into my body. I was aware that I was returning from somewhere. I had no idea where. I actually looked down at my body. I focused on the road ahead, and it even entered my mind that I should pull my car over so that I could get my bearings. But I'm so used to this high strangeness that I understood that I was experiencing something very new, and I decided to just go with it. I wanted to see where it would lead me. This was an adventure, so I completely surrendered myself. It was irrational and surreal, but I was fully aware and awake, and this was happening to me. There were no other cars on the road, only unfamiliar homes and street names. I seemed to drive for miles, and I didn't care how long it took. I was going to keep driving. And then there was the post office that is 1 mile from my apartment. It was on my left-hand side, and I turned into the parking lot, and the dirt road that I had been driving on was now paved, and I said I had slipped the loop, the loop of the Sunyata. So once again, the physicist, and the quantum physicist in Mexico, said that what had happened to me, I had experienced Kavala Samadhi, where the mind is turned off and the physical world disappears with its conceptions of space and time. The universe is perceived as an illusion without intrinsic reality. The ego is dissolved, revealing the oneness of creation and the existence of the cosmic mind. So,
wow, take one of those.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at now, and the high strangeness. That's my life, and I'm a shut-in. I'm pretty much a shut-in anyway. So being locked in doesn't really bother me. It's me and my cat. And I'm a perfect, and I always say victim, I'm a perfect victim for them because I'm here. You know, I go out maybe once a month and party with my cousin. By party, I mean have 1 or 2 drinks, because that's all it takes for me. But this is how I live my life now. Really getting into.
So what really comes up is what motivates the recurrent wheel. The wheel of destiny. What is that all about? Is there any? Is it play? What? Can you say some more about what? How come?
This is why I wanted to talk to you, Sasha. This is why I thought, well, he'll have some answers for me.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand all of this. I've just been directed to the computer, and they direct me to these different videos, and the quantum physicist has become a big part of my life as far as validation goes. And he just directed me to this another video that you can find on YouTube, non-duality and duality. And
yes,
I cannot.
Yes.
So, you know what I'm talking? See, I knew you'd know.
oh, yeah. That's the basic mistake of our society. That anything that seems in opposition is part of the same dimension.
Wow. Yes. Exactly. Yes. And what this video, and the guy is from India, I believe. His name is Gautam Sakkovila, and he says in his video. He says that in this movie we call life, see, everyone refers to it, this script is written and produced and directed by the consciousness. And all the characters, they all take place, and the movie takes place in consciousness. So the same energy is functioning through all of us. Therefore, energy and source are both one. So,
beautiful. I understand.
I know you do. I knew you would. And I wanted to say thank you to you for when I was going through that breakdown, and you and Janet were so lovely and took time out of and you had just had eye surgery, and you took time you took 2 hours to get my shit together, and I wanted to say thank you. I really appreciated that. Police Chief Lee BeGole, I just went to his funeral, March the 8th, and losing him was like losing my father. He was the last tie to that 1961. And I had a breakdown, and that's why that breakdown was March, April, May. I tried to do an interview after I left his funeral, and it's still online, and I've asked her to take it down. But I was medicated, and I actually had a friend say, "What the hell why is that interview even up? It was the worst interview you've ever done. It was just dead air." And it was dead air. I was broken, but I didn't want to not do the interview. I had committed to it. And I had just left Chief BeGole's casket. I mean, literally just left his casket. I did the interview, and it was 2 hours. And it was the longest 2 hours of my life. And I learned that sometimes, you have to say no. You just have to learn how to say no. And everyone's been so great with me about the 1 hour interviews. Well, one person wasn't. He said, just forget it. But
we're glad to make it happen.
Just Nancy, I intuit that you and the chief are working together from both sides now, and you're both investigating jointly. That you are part of a team and you're doing something together. That's what I got.
Thank you. Yes. And Cindy's still around, bless her heart. And she has me play. I have my headphones sometimes when I go to the park and music, and she has me play certain songs that we always listen to together. And I feel her, and I feel Chief BeGole. And when I went to his funeral, I didn't know how I was going to be greeted because everyone in Novi, Michigan wanted his reputation not to be spoiled. The Novi historian kept him from me because the last 2 years of his life he was living with family, and I wasn't allowed to talk to him. And I had finally gotten his nephew to say, okay, you can see him, because I said I dedicated my book to him. I want to give it to him. And he agreed. And what happened? Right after that, he ended up in the hospital. He had pneumonia, and he died. It was my worst nightmare. And I wrote in my dedication, my biggest wish is that I wish I could see you one last time. And I had no idea that the last time I saw him would be in his casket. And I can't tell you how many times I went up to that casket and knelt down on that bench in front, and I spoke to him, and I kept saying, I can't leave you. I just can't leave you, because I'll never see you again physically. And the friend that drove me there, he almost got humor out of it. He said, do you want to go up there one more time? And I said, do you think it's okay? And he said, yes. So I went up my final time and told him how much I loved him and thanked him so much for all he had done. And his nephew hugged me, and he said, the chief talked about you all the time. So I was like a daughter to him.
Yes, you say
I somehow know that you will see him again, that he will show himself to you, and that's what I think.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Nancy, are you connected to the spirit world?
Yes, I am. I've always had a way of my grandmother came to me after she died, and to give me some information. And I remember my mother knew I was telling the truth when I said Mimi came to me. She was mad. She said, "Why would Mimi come to you and not me? I'm her daughter."
Have you tried connecting with the chief since he passed to get information?
I talk to him all the time, just sending love, and I really feel he is helping me to understand what's going on about this preordained, and this is so deep for me. I'm not an educated woman, but I know my IQ has been raised by the beings. I would never. I don't even know who I am anymore, but this is not the Nancy that I was in 2011 or the Nancy that I was when Cindy died.
Yeah,
but
you're evolving.
Yes. But
just bring back to, wait, who is Mr.? Because I think we missed that part.
Mr. is the pilot. That's MR period, Mr. He was the pilot on board the ship in 1961. He was who I first ran past when I got on the ship in 61. I ran right past him. And I ran to the middle of the room. I stood in the middle of the room, and I said, I can't believe I'm on a flying saucer. And Mr. He said, it's a ship. And I said, Mr., and that's how he got his name, and I still call him Mr. because I get my messages from him or the collective mind. Everything comes from him or the collective mind. And I said, Mr., this can't be a ship, because a ship goes in the water, and a ship is what Captain Hook was on. And he said, oh, but this does go in the water. And when I was leaving, I said, Mr., why did you let them hurt me? Speaking about the small grays who did the procedures on me. And he told me my pain was perceived. They would never have allowed me to feel pain. And I realize now that I signed up for this mission lifetimes ago,
Great.
He told me to find the positive. He wanted me to find and I still look for it in everything. And even in COVID, there is positive.
Great.
I think Dr. John.
What did he look like?
He looked just like anybody's father. He was a human-looking, and he did that so I wasn't afraid. I realize that now, because he did show himself to me. In fact, he had me draw a picture of him, and I did have a memory of seeing him when I was a baby, 2 or 3 years old. And he was in reptilian form at that time. And I was thinking icky and awful, and he realized that, so he never let me see him in that form again. And he is knowledge, he is information, he is messages, and I can feel him when he is. I can feel his energy. He is energy.
Are you feeling that right now?
No, I don't feel him with me at this second. No. But I think I'd love to read this quick quote by Dr. John Mack because it's beautiful. Dr. John Mack said, quote, "Sometimes things that are good for us don't always feel good. Sometimes our spiritual learning come at the hands of rough teachers as the boundaries of consciousness are breached and we are open to new domains of existence," end quote. And I love Dr. John Mack. He's my hero. And I feel him. I felt him when I was writing. I've actually asked him for help and felt him. And he's led me to things on the computer.
Well, thank you. And stay and listen to work with Dr. John Mack. So we'll be back in 4 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.